All right, we are live. So says the software. Uh, Thank you everyone for joining us on Microsoft Unboxed podcast, episode 12. This is the podcast where we discuss Microsoft news for the week. I'm your host, Kareem Anderson. I'm joined by.
David Allen, we got a lot of good news this week, folks. Got a lot of cool things to talk about. Got some new hardware floating around out there. I'm happy to see that we're getting into early spring and all those things at CES that we were told we would see later. Some of them are starting to pop up.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we'll give you a quick rundown. As David alluded to, we'll be talking about the Microsoft Surface event that occurred yesterday. We'll also be talking about Microsoft removing the old PDF view from Edge in lieu of more design UI hints from Adobe. And we'll tell you how that came to be. We're talking about StarDock making Object Dock in Windows 10 and 11 a little bit more compatible. For those of you who are out there playing around with those third-party software attachments or programs to make Windows even better. We'll be talking about Bing Copilot and Edge departments now reporting to an official Microsoft AI business. I know Microsoft is all about AI, but ironically, until this week, they didn't actually have an AI business. But now they do, and we'll talk about all of that. We'll be talking about Pal World. We're going to get into some gaming real quick, just showing the strength of indie uh, marketing and development on the Xbox platform and how Pal World helped Xbox have the biggest month in total playtime it's had in a very long time. And I have a couple anecdotes from my own experience in playing Power World, which is a very fun game. And then we'll kind of round it out with some more Apple news. Apple is in talks with Google to basically run its AI engine or AI development for the iPhone in the future potentially. So we'll get into that and whether that's a good idea, it's a lazy idea, what could come of it. Lots of speculation because that's what we like to do here.
All
Because no
about
one
the
will
money.
officially talk to us. With that being said, let's get you guys going and get you out with a bunch of Microsoft knowledge for the day. So, you want to tell everybody about the new PDF reader coming to Edge?
Yes, as people have probably already well aware, when you open up a PDF in Edge, it's using the Microsoft PDF Reader, which is something they actually built many years ago. So, long story short, guess what? The Adobe crowd is back in play here. As we know, most of us have at least Adobe Reader for opening our tax documents, for example. If you've got any business documents, any business dealings, most likely you're using Adobe to open those products or open those files. And if you do any digital signage of things, you're probably using Adobe in some way. So Microsoft has said, hey, we're just going to adopt parts of the Adobe Reader and drop it right into Microsoft Edge for you. And we're going to get rid of the built in Microsoft PDF Reader. Now, what this brings for you is a little bit better look, a little bit better compatibility, and more accessibility options. And they're looking to go ahead and get this started. We've got a chart on our website in this post for consumer devices. That rollout has slowly started already in March of 2023, and they're planning to have this done by early to mid 2025. So if you're a fan of the Microsoft PDF Reader, those days are going to be slowly numbered, and as they roll them out, you never know when yours might disappear. Now, let me be clear on one thing. There was one comment on this that I saw. Microsoft has stated there is no additional cost for having the Adobe Reader in your browser. And I know that's going to confuse some folks because if you're an Adobe Cloud subscriber, Adobe Acrobat is in there. The Adobe Reader is free, and Microsoft says will remain free. So don't think, well, Microsoft's going to get $1 off my browser now. No, much stay as they are. You'll notice some enhancements in the look, feel, functionality, but that's about it.
Yeah, I got nothing else to add to that except bring it on. It was awesome news when they had put the PDF reader in there, and you can use it as your default for people who didn't want to go through the hassle of downloading Adobe Acrobat or uh, using their own Adobe Acrobat reader from their own subscription, or were looking for just a general PDF view reader from the Microsoft Store and didn't know which one to trust. It was great to know that Microsoft had a lot of users back by saying, "Hey, it's just an Edge." But it seems like development for that kind of tapered off after the initial excitement. There are a lot of features that people would like to see with the PDF reader. I know that they brought inking and things like that back about a year or two ago, but there's still some other things as far as text related and kind of being able to format and the ways you save certain things that we can tell by the UI that's up on the screen for those of you who are listening. They are going to be lifting elements from Adobe Acrobat and putting them into this view. So you're going to get more functionality, it looks like, and a nicer view, a more official view. So you're not just saying like, oh, is this just a web page that I need to then convert from HTML to a PDF or anything like that? It looks like, like Adobe Acrobat Reader for those, for all intents and purposes. So I'm excited. Can't wait for this to hit my browser. We'll move on to our next one. And this one's a bit of a doozy, so we'll see how long we sit at this one. We have Apple in the crosshairs of the DOJ. And I love this pick. For those who are listening, it is Tim Cook in front of Congress. I don't know what he's defending in particular, but he'll be doing it again pretty soon. What do you got for us?
I think they're going to have to do a lot of defending, to be honest. We kind of joked about this a little bit, off in our side chat, but I think the US DOJ is just, they're still cranky over the way the Microsoft Activision stuff went down, and I just think Apple is
It's still going
finally,
down, isn't it?
yeah,
Let's not forget.
yeah, that's true. I think Apple is just totally in the crosshairs, and when I read this, I kind of chuckled, and I kind of waited till later in the day to write this up just to see if anything else would roll out that needed to be included. So when I read this, basically what the DOJ is saying is what everybody has been saying about Apple here for the last couple years. They've cornered the market. They say they're using the Sherman Antitrust Act to maintain customers, to lock them in, that the smartphones are not all that great, that they're not innovating, and they're using pricing tactics and app store tactics to keep people locked in. They're saying that some of the Apple devices, in particular the smartphone apps, the accessories, are overpriced, lack innovation. They even pointed out that they have cornered the App Store for cloud streaming services, which we are very familiar with if you're a Microsoft fan, because we know what they did to Xbox Cloud. Just as no, that's not coming in here. And last but not least, they actually pointed out that Apple Wallet does not allow third-party integrators to put payment options in there. It's just what Apple allows. Then last but not least, let's not leave this one out. This is the big one. iMessage. They say that Apple goes out of their way to make iMessage less compatible and harder to message Android users. Can I get a hallelujah on that? I think there's a
Hallelujah.
lot. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there that are going to agree with that, and Apple's going to kick back. Well, we said we were going to RCS this year. Well, I'm going to make one comment on that. We're fixing to be April 1, so Apple, we're a quarter of the way through the year. Where's my RCS messaging?
Joke's
App,
on you. They said it on April 1st last year. It was all just a
yeah,
big
it
April
was
Fools.
that it was all just an April Fool's, but DOJ says, hey, we're going to defend this vigorously. And you know what? I didn't think they had much of a case with the Activision Blizzard deal. I think they might have a case here, and I think there's some things in here that they can prove. And I don't want to go too outlandish, but this may change the way a lot of things are done with Apple and outside of Apple if some of this goes down.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little bit contrarian, just because I would like our audience to have a different perspective on this. I think this is a bit of hogwash, unfortunately. Now, again, personally, I'm with you. I think there are things that Apple's gotten away with under the rules of being, not the number one provider in the world. They've kind of been able to skirt behind bigger monopolies in Google, Microsoft, IBM, things like that because of their market share. But they've also been able to kind of mask those things with partnerships and the way they kind of structure uh, payouts to developers and revenue shares and things like that that they get. These are all things that they're going to go after. The DOJ is going to go after, and they're going to have to bring their heavy guns at people who are very technical. This is the one aspect of the Microsoft Activision deal that blew up in their face. They weren't very technical. There's a case to be had that could have stopped Microsoft in Activision, but they didn't pursue it. Instead, they used talking points from Sony or more frivolous allegations, and all of those kind of fell apart. Like I said, there is a technical aspect to cloud, to mobile, to revenue share, things like that, that they could have taxed Microsoft on, especially in regards to the Xbox and the way that they kind of currently have things set up. But again, they went with more Call of Duty as its main argument, and the way that Microsoft had the deal structured for Activision, it kind of really just negated most of that. So I'm hoping that this doesn't repeat itself for Apple. They don't come out and say, "Oh, it's unfair that people are green bubbles," because that's not an argument that's going to stand in court. Saying that, I don't know how you're going to argue against better integration and security, especially when I'm assuming members of the DOJ, Congress, and everybody else who's going to hear this have iPhones and they have a personal investment in this. You're going to need to really have uh, your understanding of the law and what they're actually breaking. With that being said, I just kind of wanted to make sure our audience also knew what the Sherman Act is, because you mentioned it at the very top, and this is what they're kind of hinging the argument on. The Sherman Act of 1890 is an antitrust law which prescribes the rule of free competition among those engaged in commerce. It was passed by Congress and is named for the Senator John Sherman. Its principal author. The Sherman Act broadly prohibits anti-competitive agreements as one. Two, unilateral conduct that monopolizes or attempts to monopolize the relevant market. The act authorizes the Department of Justice to bring suits to enjoin, i.e. prohibit, conduct violating the act, and additionally authorizes private parties injured by conduct violating the act to bring suits for treble damages, i.e. 3 times as much money in the damages as the violations cost them. Over time, the federal courts have developed a body of law under the Sherman Act, making certain types of anti-competitive conduct per se illegal, and subjecting other types of conduct to case-by-case analysis regarding whether the conduct unreasonably restrained trade. So, with that being said, it seems like they might be also able to leverage some arguments that I believe uh, uh, Microsoft and what's the other company that's always they just had an issue with, the gaming company, the gaming publisher.
Activision Blizzard?
No. They create the Fortnite, Epic.
Oh, Epic Games.
They'll probably bring those companies and CEOs in to discuss, their prior grievances, because as it states, it additionally authorizes private parties injured by conduct violating the act, which, I'm sure they're going to go after the App Store, because that is, one of the largest violations. I think people, both developers and users, feel Apple is leveraging in their antitrust behavior. So, like I said, just recently, Apple made the mistake. I think personally made the mistake of kicking Epic off of the App Store in their newfound, re-envisioned version of third-party allowances. and I think it was out of grievances, and they were a little frustrated. They didn't use a very technical way to kick them off, but I believe that will come back into play in this act. We also need to make sure that people don't get their hopes up too much because this is just the start. They're just now suing. They just made it official. This could go on for 3 to 5 years, and plus appeals after that before if it if anything actually comes of it. So it's gonna make headlines now. When they get to court and we start hearing testimony, and we start getting more information from discovery, it'll probably be another shuffling of dust, and then we'll see how things are decided. But to that point, I believe the DOJ had less of a case a few years ago. Apple has now crept over, I think, 51, 52% market share in the US. So it is now the majority of smartphone devices in the US. We'll see. And the DOJ happens to be in the US. So, maybe 5 years ago when they were under 40 or just hovering about 40, there was no real case to have at that point. But now that they've crossed the majority share, I guess this is a much stronger position for the DOJ to take. So we'll see what comes of it. I'll give you the last word on that before we move on.
I agree. I think it's 2024. I'm not expecting Apple or anybody to come out anywhere in the near future and say, "Oh, we're going to change things. We're going to do this." Now, folks, if that's what you're looking for, then no, that's not going to happen. I think I picture this as peeling the onion. I think this is the start of things having to level out. There's going to be a little bit of fair play, and I think there's going to be standards created as to what things are going to be, because we're going to talk about that here in just a minute, even on some other topics. We're becoming more and more digital by the day, and I think what we're seeing over time, if anybody has, listened to Kareem and I's podcast over the last year or so, we're seeing people pushing for a fairness in technology, whether it be your product you're holding in your hands, such as your iPhone, whether it be what you pay for your iPhone, what you have access to, or what everybody charged based on your location. I think this is just part of the process that we're going to go through now. How that turns out, we'll have to wait and see.
Great. Period on that topic for now. Pin in it. We're going to move on to Stardock. What does Stardock got for us these days?
I enjoy covering Stardock. For those that don't know, Stardock is I'm gonna call it a smallish software company, and they do some pretty cool stuff over there to modify Windows, to make Windows easy to use, and add some really cool features. And this time we have Object Dock. And when I first saw the screenshot of Object Dock that they put out, I thought, looks like a Mac to me. It does kind of have that Mac flavor to it. And what Object Dock is, it allows you to take your groups of programs. For example, say you've got your productivity suite that you use every day. You've got your Office, you've got your OneNote, you've got your Outlook, or if you're a gamer, you've got your Steam, your BattleNet, maybe you've got your streaming utilities. You can group all of those together and have those in one group, and you can launch those at once, or you can launch those individually without having to necessarily hunt for each app. Now, for me, I have actually installed this on a couple of PCs. When I first saw it, I said, you know what, I might not use that all that much. But then I started realizing, when working on software and technical support, you've got all your apps there. You click the technical support, and all your stuff comes up on your screen like you need it, and you can open and close individual apps as needed. It is very convenient, and it's very inexpensive as well. $9.99 for just the app, or it is $39.99 for what they call the Object Desktop, which gets you a copy of most, not all, but I believe it is most of the Stardock offering. Now, one more thing I'll throw in there, Object Desktop 3.0 has been around for a while, but this update is the one that makes it Windows 10 and Windows 11 compatible. The animations have been improved. It supports high resolution displays, and you can customize it by going to wincustomize.com, and you can download many, many, many favorite themes for those of you that like to make your stuff look a certain way, or you really dig into making your desktop your personality, and you're not like me who keeps all the factory defaults for everything you use. Um, Go out there, give that a try. I think if you've got a lot of apps, a good daily routine, it'll help you. It does me.
Yeah, and you could probably use it on your new devices, which should be coming, I believe, in April. Gives us into our next section, which is the Microsoft Surface event, the highly touted, event that we've been kind of teasing for the last 2 weeks. It came and went with a little bit of a whimper, to be honest with you. And it's only because the audience was for enterprise. There will be another event that's more consumer oriented with some redesigns for the devices, I believe in May, I think it was. So we'll have a month to kind of ingest all of some of the new features that the corporate devices are getting, and then see if those transfer over to ones that you and I will be using. But with that being said, Microsoft had a digital event. It's about 30 minutes long, where they talked about the new Surface Pro 10 and the new Surface Laptop 6. Both of those are called Surface Laptop 6 for business and Surface Pro 10 for business. Just to be clear, that's how Microsoft likes to name stuff. Super boring, very straightforward, but that's what we're getting nonetheless. Um, they had some executives go over some of the features for these new devices. For those of you who cannot see currently on the screen, we do have a picture of what the devices look like. And if you've ever seen a Surface Laptop or Surface Pro 9 or 8, that is exactly what they look like. Not much has changed as far as the hardware design. I know that you covered some of the Surface Pro 10 features. If you want to quickly kind of go over them, just briefly, of some of the things that have been added actually to the device.
Well, we've got 5G support. I think is going to be your big deal here because it's the first time in a while that we have had. Well, first, let me back up. We've had connectivity for cellular networks in the 4G form on a previous Surface device. I believe it was the 7 Plus, if I remember right. But
Hmm.
we now have 5G on an Intel model for the first time. We do have it also in the ARM model for the Surface Pro 9. So it's the first time we're getting it in the Intel model. That's a big deal for people out in the field because you got to remember this kind of goes on with the other enhancements, the 30% brighter screen, the higher contrast ratios that are being talked about for the Pro 10 model, because these are your frontline folks, your folks out in the field who are dealing with shadows, the sun. They need the connectivity. They need to get back to the office. They have finally listened to make the Surface Pro, at least for business users, that all-in-one device that you can pick up, give it to your frontline workers. They can still talk to the back end office because they've got their connectivity there. And from somebody who has done work in the field, thank you, Microsoft, for making screen improvement. It's a big deal when you're out in the field. You've got shadows of the sun. You need to turn it this way, and you got to turn it this way to be able to, read something that somebody has sent you. They have also added the NPU to the Intel unit and a brand new surface camera that will track you as you would expect, as we have seen in the Pro X. It will also do all of the NPU functionality, such as blurring your background, changing your background. So, like you said, kind of came and went with a whimper, but I think for the business side of things, this is a nice improvement for the business users that need it, and there might even be some consumer folks such
Oh,
as myself, that do work outside and say, "Hey, I need these few little features just to make life easier."
these are definitely subtle but very necessary improvements, just to kind of round out the feature list. The field of view on the new camera is about 114 inches or so, I believe, and it records at 1440p now, so it's above the 1080p that used to
Yes,
be in the
I did
Surface
not
Pro.
mention
So
that.
you can, and because of but you did mention the NPUs, and because of the NPUs, you're going to be able to really get some great conferencing out of this, because the NPUs will be powering the Windows Studio effects, which offer built in again. So you don't necessarily need to even have, some people just have these weird alien looking rigs where they have the Surface Pro set up and then they have a camera or a webcam attached to it, and it has a cord that's being used to power it that is taking up one of your ports or dragging across the table. You don't need any of that now, because the camera has been improved and these Windows Studio effects are built into Windows on these devices, which enhance the quality. It gives you the ability to blur stuff. It gives you more, like you said, more contrast. You can also add filters. And again, this is all done from the task manager if you need to necessarily. It also aids in the microphone, noise cancellations, and stuff like that. The other thing they added was an NFC reader, which would be great if you're very mobile and you're using this device to kind of uh, operate anything that requires NFC communications. But I think above anything else, the guts of these things have been updated. So again, the hardware may be roughly the same or identical, but people are now going to be able to order options that have 64 gigabytes of RAM. I don't think we ever had that really on a Surface Pro before.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think we
Hold on a
topped
minute.
that at 32. Oh, go
I
ahead.
thought the 64 was just for the Surface Laptop 6, because looking at the pre-order options, I only saw 32. Did I miss something?
No, yeah, I think, let me double check, but I believe the Surface Pro 10 can be configured with an Intel Core Ultra 5 or Ultra 7 chip. And let's
I
go to the
believe it
pre-order
stopped at
page, shall we?
32.
Let's let's make sure we are accurate, folks. We don't want you trying to order something that you can't. Going to Surface Pro. Bear with us here.
We're kind of
10.
doing this on the fly, folks. Bear with us just
Well,
a
this is what you get when you go live, ladies and gentlemen, which we are doing right now. We are at the well, they took me to the community page. This is odd. Let me go to
Well, I
the
tell you
purchase
what, let
page.
me Surface.
Where is the Microsoft Store? That'd probably be the best place, right?
All right, I've gone to the Surface Pro 10 for business. Just type in pre-order. Let's see where this takes me. Here we go. We've got build your
What do you got for me?
device, Surface Pro 10 for business. Comes out April 9th at 12 a.m. Starts at
Mm-hmm.
$11.99. If you hit build your device, then I'm going to choose the Ultra 7 processor, the 165U. That's for our readers and watchers. $69.99 or $16.99.
Mm-hmm.
And you are correct. These options, I only saw up to 32 last night, and we stopped at $23.99. So maybe I messed up, or they added it. Maybe they added it after the fact. But you are correct. I owe you an apology there. The Surface Pro 10 does look like it gets the 64 gig, 1 terabyte SSD at $27.99.
Oh, yeah, the price is ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen. But if you plan on using this thing to do a little bit of machine learning or dabble with some AI development, um, this could be the device. This is we've always seen the Surface Pro kind of hampered when it comes to RAM necessarily. I think 32 might have been the highest it had gotten at some points, and that was again for the Surface Pro 7 Plus, or if I'm not mistaken. But normally people are stuck between the 8 and 16 gigabytes for Surface Pro. Now we're getting 64 gigabytes of RAM, the 1 terabyte of storage. Again, the storage is also replaceable, so you can probably do something a little bit more than that if you were to change it on your own. Microsoft is promising it to be 53% faster than the Surface Pro 9. It comes with two Thunderbolt 4 ports, the Surface connector as before. They're promising up to 19 hours of battery life, you know, hold for that testing if we ever get a chance to. We're also getting Wi-Fi E6 support, 6E support, and Bluetooth 5.3. As you mentioned, a 5G model. Moving on to the Surface Laptop 6, it's built roughly the same as far as internals are concerned. You can get up to 64 gigabytes of memory on that as well. I believe you can do up to a terabyte of storage. You also get the options of a Core Ultra 5 or 7 CPU. Uh, they come in 13 and 15-inch variants. They will be, I believe, in the platinum and black colorways. Not very uh, different than before, but the new thing that they're getting is a uh, what are these called? Smart card reader. And they have again two USB C ports and the USB A port as well, and the same Surface connector. Both screens for the Surface Pro and the Surface Laptop will have an anti-reflective coating put to it, which again goes to David's point about being outdoors or getting reflections if you're in a highly fluorescent area. So those are some of the improvements. Both again will also have um, the new Windows button, the new Copilot button. The Surface Pro has a new accessibility focused keyboard. I don't know if this is going to be for all of them. I'm not sure if they clarified that, but there will be new bolder key etchings on the keys themselves. So people have to get used to that. Some people I've already seen online complaining about it, saying it looks Fisher Price-ish and looks like it's for kids. Or I think one person even mentioned like, "Oh, what are the people using this blind?" I'm like, kind of hitting it right on the nose right there. This is to help people see. So you take with it what you can from it. But again, both devices have the new Copilot button, and they talked about AI about for 10 or 15 minutes about these new devices. They kind of have to hold off on that again because most of that won't be updated until the fall anyway. So there's also discussion of Windows 365 and Microsoft 365 being powered by Copilot, and what you can do with virtual machines with these devices. Check our site for more information on that. But I mean, again, I'm going to give you the last word on this. What do you think about the new devices for businesses?
Two things. I think this is a good move for, nice little spec bump for businesses. Remember, folks, businesses don't like big changes because their fleet devices, they're bought usually at some sort of discount. They have integrations into back end software, so the company can keep rolling forward. They don't need to really tinker with all the processor changes that we're hoping to see in the consumer version. I'm happy to see the 64 gigs of RAM in all the devices across the board. I would actually be excited to see the demo if you watch the presentation with a very quick um, Surface Laptop 6. The programmer was compiling things and they were showing that the Surface Laptop 6, there is a new H series processor, which is the higher end, the higher wattage in the Core Ultra. So I would be interested to see what can that machine really do. And I do have one thing that if somebody from Microsoft is watching this, I just went through the pre-order pages as if I was going to order a device. I did not see the 5G options in there, so we're gonna have to find out for you. Do those come later?
I think they
And
probably do. They tend to do that.
if not, how do you get them?
Good question. Maybe you have to have an established wireless partner in place. So if your company uses Verizon or something like that, then they give you that option. I don't know, but they tend to roll out the modem versions of the business ones a little bit later. My last bit is that for anybody wondering or interested, no, they are not using NVIDIA graphics GPUs for this. So for those of you thinking like, oh, they bumped it up at least 64 gigabytes of memory, that it might entail that they're using beefier GPUs. They're not. I think
Not
they're
quite.
using the Intel Arc GPUs as well, not the Iris Xe. So you get a little bit more graphics performance, but not by much. But it's all Intel based, so just be prepared for that. So, like I said, if you're doing more machine learning, things of that nature, more data processing sets and whatnot, that's what you prepare for. As far as rendering or outputting, exporting video and large, multi-layered graphics things, that could still be somewhere where you're questionable for the Surface Pro. But moving on, we're going to go to our next topic, which is Microsoft making its AI business official. And I thought I wrote about that. Maybe I just had the wrong slide. There we go. We'll get back to the other one in a second. Yeah, I wrote about this week. Microsoft is basically tapped the co-founders of DeepMind, I believe, and the names are Karen Simonian. I'm probably saying that horribly, and Mustafa Suleiman. They also, the two of them have also co-founded Inflection, which is another AI-driven business. Microsoft has put them in charge of what they call Microsoft AI. So, we said at the top that Microsoft has been all in on AI. They've been talking about Copilot. They've been talking about Open AI. They've been talking about, large language models and pre-generative models and things like that. But they didn't actually have their own AI business. We know that they are working on small language models to kind of consolidate some of those resources and work on things that are a little more focused than the large language models and have something of their own, because right now they're partnered with OpenAI. But it seems like they're putting Karen and Mustafa in charge. And under that, they've had a bit of a reorg. What ends up happening is the businesses which are Bing, Copilot, and Edge will now be under this new AI business, which obviously makes sense because these are where they're putting a lot of their efforts in kind of testing the waters with AI. They started with Bing Chat. They put Copilot in Edge. So that makes sense. The CEO of advertising web services at Microsoft, Mikhail Parkin, will soon report to Mustafa as well. Again, that also just makes sense. And he'll also have his principal researcher, Misha Blinko, and the Microsoft's general AI team also report under this guy. And Nadella, I believe, will have Kevin Scott, who is the chief technical officer and executive president of AI. They talk directly. Apparently, two of them talk directly, but he will also be working in partnership or in conjunction with this new CEO. Again, it's interesting to see that Microsoft is telling its internal employees that have been at the company for a while, to now report to this new person. And I don't know how. I mean, again, Mustafa and Karen seem to have a great track record, but it's interesting that they tap them, kind of outsiders, to run this business. And there are two other questions that I will present to you. Maybe you can answer them. What happens to OpenAI now that Microsoft is kind of building its own business? And the second, there was no mention of Windows, which normally would report under the same kind of heading as being Copilot and Edge, because they all kind of work in conjunction. There was no indication of where Windows or who report, where Windows reports to, because I believe, again, under Panos, all of these businesses were kind of reporting to him, and then he reported to Satya personally. So I wonder is it Mehdi, I believe, is in charge of Windows right now, or at least is kind of watching over it until they can probably have someone more established at the helm. What happens to Windows, and what happens to OpenAI with this new business?
I think, let me see if I can untangle this. And some of this is my thoughts of where this is going, and I'm going to kind of lean on our next story here for just a little bit. I think what Microsoft might be looking to do here, they've given their business AI and their consumer AI products a name, Copilot. We all know it. We know what Copilot Pro is. That's what Microsoft is putting in their products. Now, we know about the partnership with OpenAI and Microsoft, and that partnership has come into question. Like, what would happen if OpenAI went away? What would happen if they had a disagreement? What happened, if they decided one day they didn't like each other? I think maybe what you're mentioning is Microsoft is looking into developing language models that are software products that can possibly be licensed or purchased to use by other companies or companies in general that need these language models. Maybe that's why Windows specifically was not mentioned. Now, I could be completely off here, but I think that has something to do with this whole business being formed or this part of Microsoft being formed. Is AI is going to get bigger than just Microsoft products. And I think Microsoft wants to be there and say, hey, buy our model, because I know you're going to talk about it here in a minute. Nadella had mentioned to, on an interview somewhere, I cannot remember where that interview was.
Kara Swisher, I believe, in one of her podcasts.
Thank you. Where he had said, if something happens to OpenAI, we're fine. We don't want customers to worry about that. And I feel like he was kind of leading us in the direction of, we've got our own language model, we've got our own stuff. We would like to have OpenAI, but they're not necessary to where we're going. So, the question becomes, does this partnership blow up? I don't think so. Does it have, some strained relationships at times? That's possible because, it's clear that Microsoft has kind of said, we like you. We're glad you're here. We're happy we made the investment. But if something happens to you, we're fine. And I think that's part of the reason we see some of these, people getting moved around and reporting to various places, because I feel like there's a broader picture of what Microsoft wants to do that is just beyond Windows on a desktop or even on a tablet.
Yeah, tangentially related. We had mentioned a couple weeks ago that Microsoft had partnered with the up and coming, highly touted French AI company. I forget the name of it right now, which will help them establish international routes and abide by more European standards for privacy and settings and businesses or whatnot. So, to your point, what I'm saying is that Microsoft is looking to be the home for several large language model applications and pre-generative tools and have everybody basically using Azure to run them. That's what they really want to do. They want, it seemed like that Windows was the driving force for developers as the platform, not as necessarily an operating system. I think they want Azure to be like, hey, if you're company starting off wanting to be in the large language model game or AI game, use Azure to help start it off. And with that being said, can we leverage a little bit of your technology? We'll share our cloud, our massive cloud that we've invested in, with the hopes of being able to use some of the new tools that you could potentially come up with. And that's what they started with OpenAI. And it was the biggest one that they had because they had the ChatGPT model that they're using for basically everything. But I think going forward, they wanted to have, I think, Sam Altman run this AI business. This was the idea during that whole kerfuffle of him being ousted, that they wanted him to basically run this business. He went back to OpenAI, and I think they probably are in talks, roughly every other day to talk about, what's going on with the progress, what new model you're running, how can we use it in Microsoft or Azure. I think they're having those constant conversations, and those conversations will now be transferred from Satya directly to Sam, back to Sam talking to, I believe, Mustafa now. So I don't think much has changed between that relationship between OpenAI and Microsoft. I just think they will now have an official department that Sam can talk to and can take some of that off of some of these other heads that can go on and do other things. So I think it'd be good for Microsoft, but it'll also lead into our last story, which we'll circle back in a second. But let's get off of the deep, heavy conversation for a second. Talk about something fun a little bit. We want to talk about Power World, which helped Microsoft have the biggest month for total playtime in history, not just recently, but in history. So that's a big feat. Unfortunately, Microsoft didn't give us the time that was spent in Power World, I believe, specifically. They didn't reveal the numbers. Instead, Microsoft Games Department revealed that Power World played a big role in achieving this record. The game already has over 10,000 players on it. No, that is wrong. 10 million players on Xbox, just less than 2 months after its January release. It's also worth mentioning that Power World was released on January 19th, so the game didn't even have a full month at its disposal to turn January into the most played month in Xbox history. 2024 got off to a fast start with players of this year. I believe this is in quotes. Xbox had the biggest month ever on console this past January, measured by playtime, including its ID at Xbox program, which is the indie program that kind of promotes games like Power World. Pocket Pair, whose Xbox game preview title Power World had more than 10 million players on Xbox so far, and that's coming from the Xbox Wire via Twitter. I just wanted to point this out because, again, we talk about some heavy topics here, some very, dense things, and I think it's just time to go back to some gaming for a quick minute. I know we had the recent gaming, what was Game Fest? Was it? We had some kind of
Game Fest,
where
and
they
we've got some the summer Game Fest, the streaming event in LA coming up in early June
correct.
7th, in fact.
Yeah, but this was a win for Microsoft, a win for Power World, a win for indie developers in the Xbox platform. I've been playing the game. It is super fun. It's a nice kind of sit back game, in the vein of Pokemon slash any other type of RPG. It's cute. It's relatable. And you can spend tons of time. I don't know if I'm the only person in this game. I didn't know you could do this, but apparently you can die in Power World. I figured that out the hard way, and I felt really dumb for it. I'm like, I'm a man in his 40s who's dying in a Pokemon game. This should not be happening, but I did it.
Well,
I'll admit with you folks here.
I'll have to say that I have heard of the title, yes, when we have covered it this week, and I have, seen some info about it. I will be downloading it this weekend to check it out and see what it's all about. I do think it's pretty cool to see these indie developers like this succeeding. This kind of speaks to what Microsoft continues to bang the drum about. Indie developers, opportunities for players, opportunities for everybody. Bring it together. Just make content that people want to play, interact with, ingest. When I see stories like this, it makes me happy. It's not about the multi-billion, Activisions of the world. It's not about the Electronic Arts of the world. This right here is what made gaming what it is. This is where gaming started, and it warms my heart and makes me just want to close the laptop here and go fire up some of these indie games and play because success like this is something you don't see every day. Way to go, Power, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and Microsoft is looking to continue backing it. They've come out with, I believe, several Power World themed controllers, so and customizations designs. So if you're a fan, if you're one of the 10 million players that hasn't died like myself, you can go make yourself proud by customizing a controller to one of your pals, and or maybe have it look like one of your places or whatnot. Either way, go out and enjoy the game. We're gonna get into our last one, which is a bit heavier. We're gonna get into talking about Apple and Google pairing up to tackle AI on an iPhone. I'm gonna see. We don't have any solid information on this, so to speak, because there've just been rumors, but a lot of people are reporting on it. They started off the week with this. I believe Monday was the first story that broke. 4 days later, we're getting people who are familiar with the conversations that are going on saying that this is, all but certain. Despite Apple, I believe, saying last week or week before last that they had, they had plans to have big AI announcements, and everyone kind of believing that it was going to be Apple that created its own large language model or whatnot. But anyway. I believe Bloomberg was one of the first to break it, saying that Apple was in talks. And they want to say why it matters is because Google can gain scale and within the AI arms race, which is currently behind. because it has 2.2 billion active devices that Google could be helping power with the Gemini AI. Uh, in other words, the partnership, should it come to fruition, makes a massive amount of sense for both sides. I believe Ben Thompson at Trajectory was writing because currently, I believe, being or Google pays what is like 12 to 18 billion dollars, something like that, in order to be the sole search engine provider for the iPhone. I wonder if this is going to help balance those scales. Maybe they bring down the cost of requiring Google to pay if they can leverage Gemini. So maybe instead of paying 12 billion, they pay 8 billion, but they also get all of the Gemini technology baked into several Apple software and services. Investors were super happy about this. I believe when the news kind of broke, I think Google's stock went up as well as Apple's. They went up by like 2 or 4%, if I'm not mistaken. Now, I'm going to get your thoughts on this, and then I'm going to talk about some potential downsides.
I think this makes sense. I know there's a lot of people out there, the Apple fan crowd. I want Apple AI. I want it, I want AI. I want to do it the Apple way. I want that integration. But and I understand that. That's what Apple's all about. They're all about integrating everything with their products and everything else in their products and tying you up, which is part of the DOJ stuff that we discussed earlier in the pod. And I get that. But when you're using Google as the search engine for your devices by default, and Google is paying for that, obviously Apple might intend for this to be a long-term relationship. They don't intend to possibly develop their own search engine or change partnerships, to some sort of search engine or help even build another. So when you've got Google as your search engine, it makes sense that Gemini, the Google AI product, is your AI source because there's got to be that integration there that pulls it all together. And I feel like if they did anything else, it would be separated. Now, here's the catch on this. I have noticed that Copilot on Android can interact with some device functions. It's going to be interesting how, when you're holding an iPhone in your hand, does that Gemini model react to your own device function? Or how does Apple hook that together, maybe with a small language model for interacting with your specific device? That's my only question because when you've got Android phones out there, Gemini fits right in. I've also got Gemini on my Android device. It fits in beautifully. You see the integration with Copilot into the Android devices. So, how for the on device function, such as turn the brightness down on my screen, does Siri do that still? Is there a hook between Gemini and Siri and it becomes one? So those are things we've still got to see ironed out.
Yeah, to kind of talk about some of the less flashy things about this whole partnership, we have to keep in mind that Gemini is a brand name for a language model that Google produces. So, in the vein of Copilot slash OpenAI slash ChatGPT, that's kind of what we're going to have here. If this works out, is that Apple will still call it probably Apple AI, powered by Gemini. So,
Probably.
similar to how Copilot or Windows is powered by Copilot or vice versa, whatever. So uh, now the question becomes, because we just had Google lose, what was it, like billions of dollars off their stock evaluation, because they had a mess up with I believe their text to image portion of their large language model when it was doing some random race switching between historical figures or whatnot. Uh, Even with that being said, Apple's looking to partner with them. I wonder why they've had talks at OpenAI that they weren't going to go with OpenAI to just be the underbelly, the foundation of their own tweaked out version of Apple AI, something that they could, compete with. Again, Microsoft doesn't make OpenAI. They don't make the ChatGPT platform. They just leverage it and then brand it and put Copilot on top of it with their own tweaks. I'm assuming Apple's gonna do the same. I just wonder why they're interested in using Gemini's, even though Gemini was just again recently kind of going through the doghouse. They're making a lot of the same mistakes that Microsoft and OpenAI are making, but to a much larger degree. And if your device, if you're powering 2.2 billion devices, and people say Apple just works, and you have these issues. So if someone types in like, "Hey, I want to generate a picture of George Washington," and he comes up Puerto Rican, does that now have a bad result for the Apple branding? Like, those are potential things that I see going forward with Apple, kind of not having full control or reins over their potential AI. The other thing that comes up in question is, are they going to start asking for a revenue share? How are they going to address privacy and accessing customer information? Because Google is going to need that, or they're going to leverage that in order to make Gemini or make future models of Gemini that much better. So is Microsoft now easing off we're the privacy company because we're gathering all the information from the internet and all from the web and all from the devices in order to produce AI that works specifically for you? Because there's no way they're going to necessarily be able to do an on-device version of this. We talked last week about the amount of resources it takes to generate these things. These have to be done by servers, and even the servers have to be, they are emitting tons of emissions. They are, draining tons of electricity in order to produce these responses and solutions for people. Apple's not going to be able to do that on device, so they're going to have to default to Google's current servers, which they have been saying for years about how much they don't want to do that and how they are anti that and why their devices are better than that. So where does Apple go from that point? I'll let you have the final word on that.
I think, and I paused here to figure out how to put this in a way that you guys can understand. I think this is the start of something large. Apple has said for years, secure device, do it our way. Secure device, do it our way. And I think we have finally reached a point where Apple has opened that door just a little bit and you can go, hey, we might have to share. We might have to work together to make all this work, because iMessage is the perfect example of that. They came out with the end-to-end encryption on iMessage years ago. And what does Apple do? We are the most secure. We are the secure. We are this. We are that. We are this. And they're even comparing it on screen. Android is this. We are this. But I think we have reached the point to where Apple is saying, look, we don't have that search engine. We don't have that body of information to pull from. We've got to work with somebody to get that search engine. Okay, that's been Google. That money, that check is, been written. So now we have to figure out how to do AI. Okay, we've got the DOJs after us. People have been after us about the way we have done things. I think this is the start of Apple at least putting about a crack in that door to say, we will share. Now, what they won't tell you is you're probably inheritedly giving up a little bit of security, a little bit of privacy. That's just part of being on the internet, folks. Don't let that scare you. And Apple's not going to tell you that necessarily. They're still gonna brand things the Apple way. They're still gonna put the Apple name on it. It still may be called Apple, like you said, Apple AI powered by Gemini. Maybe Apple takes a copy of Gemini and they have it in their data centers. That copy is updated. Maybe Apple is allowed to manipulate that copy in some degree. But I think this is the start, a itty bitty teeny weeny start of Apple agreeing to share, to work together. Because as we mentioned, it ain't gonna happen today, it ain't gonna happen tomorrow, it ain't gonna happen next year. But I think we're headed down that road of Apple's going to have to play with others. And maybe they know that deep down, or maybe the attorneys have said, look, we're eventually going to have to play with others. This is the start of Apple saying, we're thinking about playing with others. We brought the toy box. You can have the tennis ball as long as we control what you do with that tennis ball.
I mean, to your point, Apple will have to start playing well with others. I do wonder how a potential FTC or DOJ investigation establishes that playground, because they played well with Google constantly. Will they now be forced to maybe play well with OpenAI for this particular thing, because they've done, so many contractual things with Google? It's been a one-sided affair with Apple and Google kind of cornering the market. And the second thing is, does this now just make it a Google monopoly as far as smartphones are concerned? They control search on the iPhone. They control search on Android phones. They control AI on Android phones. They will now potentially control AI on the iPhone, which means they are the monopoly when it comes to AI on smartphones. They will be the monopoly when it comes to search. They are the monopoly when it comes to search on smartphones. That's what I'm wondering, if the DOJ comes in and says, you know what, now that you've partnered and signed with Google, you may need to break that up and go with OpenAI or somebody else, because you guys, the two of you, have colluded to basically lock any and everything else out of smartphones. These are things that won't be answered today,
It's going to get messy.
but it's going to get messy. But you try not to have a messy week, ladies and gentlemen. We want to thank you guys for joining us for a messy podcast full of questions that were unanswered. We apologize for that. But as the weeks come and go, we'll get more and more answers, and the two of us will be here to deliver them to you. Where can people find you if they have even more questions they want to pose?
Ask away, folks. I'm always interested in what everybody's got to say and all these theories. I kind of dig this stuff, and look forward to having this discussion with you every week. So hit me up on DavidPAJ1978. That's Threads or X. I'm on either place. I will make sure to happily engage in this discussion, and I'll even David at MicrosoftUnboxed.com. I don't mind if somebody drops in there as long as you're constructive about it. I don't mind. I enjoy these discussions. I enjoy these interactions, and maybe some of your thoughts and opinions make it to the podcast here.
You can find me at Mindhead1 on Twitter/X. You can find me at Kareem Anderson on Threads and Instagram. Like I said, I talk about tech constantly. So in my off time, I do talk about movies, especially comics and geek related things. I have been watching the new X-Men cartoon, which is amazing. So if any of you want to talk about that, that's all I'm talking about for the next, I don't know, 72 hours or so. So hop on board, hop online, we can chat about that, and then we can get back to whether or not Apple and Google are the comic book villains of the smartphone world. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great weekend for the last time. Thanks again, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, guys.